Okay, it looks like we're getting settled. Is everybody sitting down, finding their seat? Yes, welcome. Thank you for being with us here tonight at this event. I would like to introduce three writers tonight who will be speaking to us about the joy of storytelling. Oh, I should say beforehand, my name is Bjorn. I am a writer here in Iceland. First, we have Pedro Garcia. He won the Grassroot Grant in 2017 for his first novel, Málleysingarnir, Languageless, which was a big, crazy, and most of all, I think, very unexpected novel, written in his spare time while working as a teaching assistant. And then his follow-up, Lungu, which came out last year, just won the Icelandic Literary Prize this January. Have you recovered from that?
I have a lot of unresolved trauma from this. And this is just adding to the list. So.
We're also very lucky to have with us Jenny Colgan, who at the last count I could find online was 41 books under your belt. Is that correct?
It's quite a lot. Hello, can I say hello? It's such a treat to be in your fantastic country. We do the same thing in Scotland. If it's sunny for 2 days and we have visitors, we tell them it's always like this. I also need to apologize because if I wasn't here, we could do this in your beautiful language, so I am very sorry about that. But I am thrilled to be here. So, thank you.
We're very glad to have you. Jenny writes in the realms of romance and comedy and also science fiction. You've written some Doctor Who novels as well, right? And she is a huge proponent of reading for pleasure and as a pastime and as something that is much better for you to pass the time than Netflix or whatever you have. Am I right in that?
Netflix is also cool.
And then we have Benny Sif Ísleifsdóttir. She studied ethnology as a master's in ethnology, and she also won the Icelandic Literary Center's Grassroot Grant in 2018 for her first book, Grima. And since then, she has done 2 children's books and 3 other full-length novels. Hansdætur, Daughters, published in 2020. Djúpið, Depths, published in 2021. And Gratiana, which was a sequel to Hansdætur, published last year. And Hansdætur was also nominated for the European Union Prize for Literature. And I also won the Grassroot Grant, but both me and Pedro won it before you, but we only have 2 books, and you have 5. Why is that?
Well, I tend to explain it by, because I was at a certain age when I finally started, so it has kind of built up in me all the joy of storytelling.
Right, and yeah, that is the theme for our panel tonight, frásagnargleði, or the joy of storytelling. And I have to admit, when I first heard this theme, I was slightly worried, because I am a writer and I do know writers, and we are an angsty bunch. We get very sort of eerie, and particularly when I speak with writers who are in the midst of writing, they rarely have a smile on their face. And so I was worried about that, but I figured we'd find our way through it. And then I attended a panel this morning where Pedro told Auður Jónsdóttir, and I quote, "There is no joy in writing."
Yet here we are.
I think my favorite quote is, "A writer is just like anybody else, they just find writing slightly more difficult."
Do you stand by that statement, Pedro, now that you're here on stage with us?
I thought what happens at Norræna húsið, it stays at Norræna húsið. Apparently, thanks for reminding me. No, but the act of writing can be a lot of different things, and it does have some pleasures to it, for sure. If we're talking solely in terms of writing, sitting down, writing by hand, typing on the computer, and there is a pleasure to it. There's a type of pleasure that you get from problem solving. And earlier today I was comparing writing or translating to playing a game like Tetris, where you have these cubes falling down, and then you organize them, and then if you successfully combine them, they disappear. So that's an obstacle that's out of your way, and that's a kind of untypical for a lot of things in life, that you are presented with an issue and then it just resolves completely and you never have to deal with it again. So that is a pleasure. And then another thing that comes with telling stories, aside from writing, that's a different thing. But of course, telling stories is a way to connect to others and to communicate and share. So, like, when I woke up, the panel that I did this morning, that was another person. Like, that was morning me. It's not a good guy. Like, this is the evening me, and I'm here to have fun.
Do you relate to that, Jenny, of writing as a problem solving, of that being sort of the pleasure?
That's exactly it. You solve yesterday's problems, and then you make some more for tomorrow. And then do you know, I like having written. And I quite...
When you look and it's like 2,000 words today, like, that's a good day.
I'm a slave to my word count. Are you?
No, not really. I wouldn't say that. I don't. Well, I write most of the days, but it very much depends how much it is within one day. And I usually don't keep track of words. I think that would be, too haunting, too overwhelming, kind of.
But yeah, Jenny,
and a surprising amount of it comes from either taking a walk or being in the shower. I find this often when the most useful bits of whatever it is you're working on will suddenly appear to you. Yeah. Is, just putting on a pair of shoes and walking in one direction until you figured it out and then come back.
Yeah, also, being a smoker is really good because then you're forced to leave your problem for a while and you're focused on something else. And that's, like, we could also just talk about the pleasures of smoking. I'm not a smoker anymore, but I miss it very much. But that would typically be a moment where I got a eureka moment.
It is. There's an old definition of the way to fly is, to kind of jump off something and forget about the ground. It works really much better if you're not looking right at it. And then your subconscious can creep up on you and go, well, they could do that. And you go, oh. That's the fun bit of writing, isn't it? When someone's stuck in a room. People are always getting stuck in rooms they won't leave, parties they won't leave. And, one day you'll just be walking along and go, oh, okay. Then, a horse crashed through the window or whatever it is. That's fun. Then there's another problem.
No, I was just going to say that if you didn't find that your characters make trouble for you and you as the author, you kind of have to, solve it for them.
But I wonder, Jenny, if you're sitting down every time you said somewhere that whenever you sit down, you're writing 2,000 words at a pace, and with 40 books, does it never become a toil work? Can you still hold on to that sort of spark of the book as it was when it started out, and the joy in that?
Some days, but it's still, it is a job. So, some days you're kind of like, hey, this is great. Watch me type. And then other days you're like, okay, this is a disaster. And I'm going to send it in. And they're going to say, Jen, what were you thinking? This is not how books work. I still think that. Now, when I send it off and I write 1 or 2 books a year, depending. And then I'll get it to the stage and I'll send it to my agents and send it to my editors. And I'm still fairly convinced they're going to go, oh, we've passed it around the office and we've had a good laugh. This is not how it works. So, so the answer is you're trying to build joy for the readers, and that's very much what I try and do, and to build a story that would bring me joy. But the process of building that is still quite difficult, even if the end result is designed to, be cheerful.
Yeah, you seem very sort of, you seem to hold your readers very dear to your heart in a way. I think a lot of writers, they don't want to necessarily think too much about their readers. They don't want to imagine them, but you quite often in your books, you include a little note at the start specifically addressing them and thanking them for the reading. And I believe that's you're going to read from one of those introductions for us today.
I am. Now, are you going to read the translation?
Yeah, we'll have the translations on the screen right behind you up over here.
Okay, this is the high-tech section. It's a very short.
I'm just realizing now that I mixed up the orders, so there's going to be a little bit of scrolling here while they sort that out, but don't let that stop you.
See, you go high-tech, and this is what happens. Okay, is it me now?
Yeah. You're all good.
Okay. If you love books, well, then I always think you have a layer of protection against the world, which sounds strange, but that is what I truly believe. If you read, I think it means you don't always have to take your own word for it. It means there are more heads to be in, more lives to be lived than simply your own. My son isn't a big reader, nor a particularly precocious child. But I do remember when he read the Harry Potter series, he came up to me and he said, astonished, "It's not like the film, it's like actually being there, Mum." And I still believe that reading is the best form of direct brain-to-brain communication that humans have yet figured out until Facebook makes us have implants. I don't know if that bit came up.
There is certainly something to that the brain-to-brain connection, and sort of, I always find reading and writing to be this one of the most powerful tools we have to sort of teach people empathy and sort of experiencing the world from another person's perspective to some extent. And I do wonder, because all of you are work in the third person primarily, I do believe. Am I correct in that?
No, I jump in between whatever I think suits the book or the characters. Sometimes I will get about 20,000 words in to a first person and realize it should be in third person, which is it's a horrible job. Someone could invent a computer program that, one, can change from first to third, and two, can change from present to past. That would be awesome.
Yeah, what about you, Pedro? Because I know that according to some of the stuff you mentioned on panels here, your writing, even though it comes off as very fantastical, it does have a certain carefully hidden autobiographical bent to some extent, but the third person that you supplied to it seems very natural and very sort of free-flowing. Is there something about writing in the first person that you find slightly off-putting, perhaps?
Yes, I have made attempts to it and never liked what I produce in the first person. Maybe that's because I don't like me as a first person. But talking about putting autobiographical elements into the stories is that most of my characters come about that way, stemming from something within myself. So even though it's written in the third person, the core of every character is some kind of a mirror image or a projection, rather, of some kind of psychological problem, a neurosis or an anxiety that I have, and that's what they build from, and then they add layers until they become developed as their own unique characters that are completely unlike myself, except they're an attempt or a venue or a way to explore fears and things that have deeply personal meanings to me. And then, of course, the story takes on its own life, and it becomes more than me just wallowing in my misery, although that is something that I tend to do a lot. So, yes? No, continue. Yeah. Do you want to hear more about my wallowing in self-pity? Yes?
I have to say, there's a certain cliche that non-Scandinavians have about Scandinavian men. You're doing a wonderful, wonderful
job.
Thank
you. I'm just here to make you feel that you were correct all the time.
Yeah, I'm understanding a little bit more about sort of the joy that you say you feel about when the tattoo screen disappears and you can sort of like leave the manuscript behind and leave it in the realms of your readers.
But there is also a joy in the playfulness. Sometimes it can become self-indulgent, and that's something that I think I tend to do in both of my novels as well, is that I dwell in stuff that's may not be very necessary for the story, but it's something that I enjoy writing about, and so like the most useless things are the ones that bring me the most joy, I would say.
I think this is a good bit for you to read a little bit for us from Lungu. And Jenny, there is English translations on the screen behind you if you would like.
Það skrjáfaði í laufum ólífutrjánna í golunni. Enzo skoðaði aldininn og langaði að finna bragðið af hráum ólífum. Þeim sem spruttu úr sama jarðvegi og hann sjálfur. Hann tíndi eina og stakk upp í sig, fann beiskjuna leik munnin á meðan hann reyndi árangurslaust að tyggja grjóthart óætið sem hann endaði á að kyngja í heilu lagi. Svo tók hann aðra ólífu og lék sama leikinn og aðra og enn aðra, kyngdi einni handfylli og eftir annari af þrjóskulegri gremju þar til hann sveið í hálsinn. Þá hélt hann heim á leið. Daginn eftir vaknaði hann svo veikur að það þurfti að kalla eftir lækni, sem tilkynnti eftir skoðun að þessi ungi maður lægi við dauðans dyr og þyrfti á spítala hins snarasta. En svo kom alla upp orði fyrir magakvölum, en fyrir tilstilli forsjónarinnar var á spítalanum glænýr röntgenbúnaður. Hann fekk verkjastillandi lyf og þegar hún var farið að líða betur kom sérfræðingur með niðurstöðnar. Ég skoðaði röntgenmyndirnar, sagði hann. Og hvað er í lagi með mig? Ég hræddur ekki. Við fundum skugga. Hvað meinarðu? Skugga. Krabbamein, ungi maður. Það er búið að dreifa sér alla þarmana. Ég hef aldrei séð annað eins. Það er ekki skrítið að þú þjáist. Af myndina að dæma er kraftaverk að þú standir enn í lappirnar. En læknir, sagði enda. Þá senda mig í stríðið. Og ungi maður, þú þarft ekki að fara neitt til þess að deyja. Mér þykir ólíklegt að þú lifir út mánuðinn. Farðu heim. Enzo setti á sig hattinn og virtist alltaf beygja af. Sérfræðingurinn settist við skrifborð, kom glerurum fyrir á nefinu og páraði á blað. Það er ekki hægt að setja riffil í hendurnar á úlingi sem stendur skjálfandi við dauðans dyr. Við fyrsta hóstakast missir hann úr höndunum og skýtur undan næsta manni. Enzo leit ekki upp en kinkaði kolli. Þessu framvísaru þínum yfirboðara, segir sérfræðingurinn, og rétt honum bréf þar sem vottað var að Enzo Cornelio væri óhæfur til að gegna herskyldu vegna ólæknandi krabbameins sem drægi hann til dauða áður en langt liði. Enzo þakkaði sérfræðingnum fyrir dauðadóminn, kvaddi, fór heim, lastaði sér inn á kamri þar sem hann skilaði af sér rúmu kílói af ómeltanlegum ólífum. So this is the type of thing that I enjoy. This brings me joy. A shit joke, basically. I'm not, that's who, like, does this fit with the depressed Nordic man also, that they like scatological humor? Yes? Okay, well, I'm ticking in all the boxes. Wow.
Iceland has lived up to my wildest dreams.
Well, I do, because I do wonder, this maybe is a good point to bring in your book, Benny, because I did read in some reviews that some readers were slightly sort of startled by the very kind of descriptions of scatological elements to some extent of the daily lives and toils that take place in Handstæður.
So I, like Pedro, I haven't outgrown the subject. Well, these sort of things shed a light on the reality of the people and the time that I was writing about. And that was something I really wanted to put a light on, and not a rosy light, but you know, just the realistic one. Yeah. So yes, I tend to do that, maybe too much to some people's liking, but you know, that's how it is.
No, I thought it was fantastic. It really spends time drawing a very realistic and a very real picture of just sort of the daily, everyday toils of living in this time, and in particular, the sort of toils and troubles of women in this time, even describing sort of just the daily hassles and the limitation placed upon you by just menstruation equipment of that period.
Exactly, all the daily hazards women in particular have to deal with. I still haven't written a book where the main character is male. I somehow it wouldn't feel right, even though I know a couple, married to one, and but I don't know it by heart. And I think the only option you really have if you're choosing a topic you want to write about, it has either to be something you know by heart or something you're curious enough about to do the proper research. So I'm not curious enough about men, I must be saying. But yeah, that's pretty much why I choose to write about women and the world of women. And because, we have been joking a lot about this joy of storytelling, what that was among us three. And I said to Pedro today, probably joy of storytelling, it's probably just the same as, being very talkative, using very many words to say a lot about the littlest and smallest of things, which is really what makes up our lives. And especially maybe the lives of women who live very mundane lives and back in the days.
Yeah, because I also found it interesting because we have a kind of a long tradition here of novels set in like the 19th century or the early 20th century in small fishing villages in Iceland. And they are quite often written by men and quite often about men. And I remember a friend of mine who said sort of offhandedly that she had a theory that this was a loophole that male writers had found to write about women without having to worry about feminism or sort of the post-Me Too moment that we are in. But all the equal rights and feminism is very much sort of ingrained into the consciousness of at least your main character, at least in Gratiana, who appears both in Hansdætur and in the sequel, Gratiana. And to some extent, they are quite foreign ideas to the setting. But I do wonder whether the realism that you apply to the setting sort of counters that sort of the foreignness of the ideas that she presents to it.
Oh, it's a long question.
I'm sorry. I try not to do that.
What I like to do in my stories is that it's a certain time I want to talk about, and it's a certain settings maybe I like to dwell in. It's usually not the story. It's not there yet. It's the time and the setting that I go along with. My characters join me, and then I sort of just travel with them, because writing is, for me, somehow, maybe because I write about times gone by, it's sort of taking a holiday, escaping the times we live in, and going away, different place, different time, and maybe it's not answering this question, but I also feel like that some of the younger authors, especially here in Iceland, they are better at writing about the current affairs. They stand better on the ground, both feet. And their take on some of the current issues in recent books, I think, is excellent. But me being my age, I've noticed people that used to be my age, they're getting old. And this is an escape form, really, lingering in the past, but leaving the current affairs to the younger generation of writers.
Really? I always feel like you're very much using the past to reflect the current moment we are in. I don't feel that the current moment is that far away from those characters and the settings.
No, that is true. Because what I like to do is to put some of the current affairs I like to address, but I like to mirror them back. Being intersex, anorexia, being a feminist. But I feel like I have a more control of it. And, obviously, I don't have to make my characters, be on social media, which is trouble enough just for myself. So,
I think this is probably a good time for you to read a little bit
Yes.
For us from Hansdætur.
when I was told I had to have a page to read, and it was meant to show the joy of storytelling, I went about it like I was looking for a needle in a haystack. But then in the end, I just chose half a page. And my glasses, I am at this age. Verst þó að við getum þurft að borða útsáskartöflurnar, sagði mamma og bjartsýnin virtist vera að brá af henni. Ef við þurfum þess, þá gerum við það, sagði Björn Ebenezer. Og Graziana fann til með mömmu sinni sem dreymdi að stækka kálgarðina vori og geymdi sérvalda kartöflur í kommóðun hennar Borgu, innvafðar í dönsk kjólaefni sem aldrei saumað úr. Þetta orðin voðaleg hungurvaka, fannst Mæjumu, og þreifaði í vösum sínum eftir kandísnum. Svona, sætið ykkur í munni, greyin mín, hélt hún svo áfram og sló sundur svolítinn bita sem hún fann. Og meðan Graziana, Matthilde og Sonja Karen sugu mólana sína, yfirfór fullorðna fólki bjargir sínar. Guðbjartur átti enn einhverja innig hjá Bratt og Björnhólm, en líklega var ekkert þar í hillu sem þau vanhagaði Þar var eins og eyðimörk síðast hefa gáð. Mamma átti, auk útsáðskartaflana, nokkra lúkur á hrísgrónum sem henni hefði verið gefnar, en Mæjama gaf ekki mikið fyrir þann kost. Skrípafæði, hnussaði hún og fitjaði upp á nefið.
I have to say I very much enjoyed the part that you chose, because I think it shows very much what you do in that you have this sort of larger macro story, but it's all built out of these tiny little details about sort of the everyday things and objects that occupy the characters' minds and their worries. Do you think that comes to some extent from your studies as an ethnologist and sort of awareness of sort of the folklore and the cultures?
I would believe so, and maybe that is the reason why I chose folklore, to study folklore or ethnology. I like you wouldn't want me to write a book about politics, no. But I can write about the little and small, the things I pay attention to, that's something I know by heart, and I'm quite, I think, okay with writing about that.
I think that's something I also find in your books, Jenny, that there's always a very large cast of characters, but there's a delicate touch. Every character has like a very small details that bring them out to some extent, and that are all held together by this sort of third-person narrative that sort of weaves them around. But your characters also flit between stories, so you don't necessarily have to abandon them when you finish one story, because they might reappear in their own series later on.
Well, it's kind of a cliche of good writing advice, but also good human advice, I always think, is that everybody is the hero of the story that they're in, and every character that you write is the hero of a particular story that they're in. You just don't happen to be writing it today. But, don't forget, and the nice thing about writing series is you can bring characters that you're fond of and push them a little further up the stage. So that's nice. But I always like to think of even people who, there's an estate agent that appears in all of my books. If anyone ever has to move, he's there, magically, around the country. I'm the only person who knows that Lance is this, you know, I know quite a lot about his life, despite the fact that he's had about 8 lines in 16 books. So, you know, I do have a very strong sense of where everyone's going, even if they just flit across the back.
I wonder whether, rather than speak all this talk about joy, maybe we should instead start talking about freedom to some extent. So in sort of the long labor that follows from like the first sparkling of an idea for a book up till the point where a book is published, where in that process do you feel the most free? Is it in the midst of the writing? Is it before the book has taken any shape whatsoever and is merely an idea? Or is it letting go of the work in some extent? Maybe we'll start with Pedro this time.
Yeah, well, for my 2 books, I think I followed a similar pattern in many respects, in that I start with making some kind of scheme, like a rough idea of what the shape of the thing is, and then there's a lot of freedom to explore and to follow things that, you know, you use the ability to connect different things, and things just add on, and then you read things and become inspired by them. I think reading while you're writing is super important for me, and for others, I understand that they tend to not like to read something and in order not to be overly influenced by something. But as that kind of snowballing effect starts and you get so engaged with your own story and your ideas, you are inspired by everything that you see. And that comes from books and life and movies and what have you, and then it comes, but it never occupies like the space of your life. It's somehow similar to me as if you try to imagine somebody's face, they're not appearing in front of you. They're like they appear in a different place in your mind that's hard to kind of grasp, and that's a similar place where a story is. For me, so it's like kind of fermenting, and so I don't know. There's a term called, I think, like a discovery writing, where you kind of have a very rough idea and then you just allow yourself to do whatever. So that's a lot of freedom, and a kind of freedom that you don't necessarily have with a lot of other things or endeavors that you take on in life, where you can, you know, you can create universes and make anything happen without taking any responsibility for anything, because it's first draft or even pre-first draft. You're just getting a sense of a style or whatever, and then afterwards, you know, kind of need to rearrange things and figure out, well, what actually is the story and what was just something that doesn't fit into that idea. And unfortunately, there are a lot of darlings that need to be killed at some point, but that is a particular kind of pleasure, but also the editing phase and kind of rewriting it also brings separate kinds of pleasure, where you kind of fix things, and there's a niceness to, you know, it's a lovely sensation to realize something is not needed in a story, and then just chucking away like a page or a lot of pages, and that seems like a painful thing, and it can be a painful thing, but if you feel that it's serving the story, that's also a freedom. You're free of the bad ideas.
Absolutely. I wonder, Benny, in your case, I've always been very daunted about writing historical novels, because I know the Icelandic readers, and they can be very, very particular about, like, things have to be just very accurate, and sometimes just the smallest mistake or non-specificity about geography or time or anything it'll be enough to make them shut the book, because they have this very factual way of reading novels, for example. So I imagine discovery writing is in some way a little trickier for you, because you have this world that you need to constantly sort of keep in place.
Yeah, this is so true. It doesn't matter how much I research and how well I try to articulate everything, do all the Googling, because in the end, you will have the unhappy unhappy event of a besserwisser reading your book. It's gonna happen. It happens. And you have made some mistakes. There are bound to be some. I can tell you one example. In my book, Djúpið, I have my people going to the countrysides, and for that I needed a jeep. And I did look it up, and I thought Land Rover, that's a solid one. So they're traveling in a Land Rover. And I thought I was all good with this. But a guy, a very nice guy actually, but he belongs to that part of the human race that, is interested in cars. Like really interested in cars. And he doesn't think of it as just, a mean to get from A to B or to the end of the alphabet. And he says to me, "You have a Land Rover in your story." Yes. And the book is about said to happen in 1975. Yes. Had no idea where this was going. And your character, he rolls down the window shield, the window pane. Yes. Well, I'm pretty sure. In 1975, this car then must have been 1975 or even older. Yes, I agreed. But it was only, I think, model 1976 or maybe 77 when you pulled the window pane down by, doing the clockwise thing. Otherwise, you had to pull it. But my character was doing this. And he said, "But don't worry. If there will be a reprint, you can fix this." I'm pretty sure we won't come to that, but if it happens, I will probably have this all mixed up somehow. Maybe, oh yes, there was something about the Jeep, yes. Oh, you probably had to go in front of it and to start the engine, do the clockwise thing. Something like that.
You shouldn't try to please Land Rover drivers. They all wave to one another in traffic. Like nobody would do that in a Honda. Like no Hondas are waving at one another in traffic because they're so proud of their cars.
But it's like with this thing, I could never have thought of the question. It's I could never have posed it.
But it seems to me,
so you're bound to go wrong somewhere, always.
Well, you kind of found like a glorious loophole for that because you create fictionalized locations that certainly have elements that are familiar to us, but you feel very much in control of the villages that you sort of set your stories in, and you sort of disassociate them a little bit. And I do wonder whether that is part of what gives you the freedom of bringing in perhaps modern ideas, this sort of like slight distance that you place on the actual historical setting.
Well, I like to remember that I'm writing novels, even though they're historical, even though my readers sometimes may forget. But this is how I create some leeway, making this, not using the actual names for an actual place. So you're correct. This is what I do for exactly that.
What about you, Jenny? You've done kind of both. You have novels that are set in very specific actual locations, such as Mount Polburn on the coast of Cornwall, but then you also have fictionalized villages, such as Mern. Mern is a fictional village, am I right?
Yeah, and Mount Polburn is fictional.
It's Mount Polburn.
Oh, yeah.
I Googled it. There are pictures and everything.
The owner. That's interesting.
Well, you did a very good job.
Yeah. The Wikipedia entry was the hardest. No, as Benny has already put so beautifully, unless it's a city, if it's London or Edinburgh or Paris, that's different because you can have a view. If it's a small town, then anything you write about a real town, even if I grew up in a horrible town, right? It was a small, dirty fishing town. But if anybody else slags it off, no. I can tell you that it was horrible. You can't say, I went to your town, it was horrible. You know, that's the problem. So you can't have a real town because everybody that lives in that town will make a small voodoo doll of you. Pins in it. So do you have like local Facebook groups here where people complain about parking and dog poo? Right, multiply that by 15,000 and that is what will happen to you if you use a real location in your book. So no, you never do it. So no, I mix up, like Muir is a combination of Shetland and Bute, which is a beautiful island. So you mix it up, but you never, ever use a real person's home. The Jeep would be just the start of it.
What about you, Pedro? Because you've kind of very much gone there. I know for your first novel, you traveled to Romania as like a research, but then I was reading Lungu, and it takes place in various continents and travels very like a long distance in time and in place. Surely you didn't visit all these places in the research for Lungu?
Well, most of them, yes. I've been to most of these places, but in other cases, I needed a substitute. As I think I was talking about earlier this morning, like a lot of times I'm reflecting on something from my own family's history, and in order just to remove myself from the work a little bit, for the benefit of the reader, maybe most of all, just because for them to be more engaged with the story as a type of its own fiction and not just very obviously the author, like looking on his trauma. But so I will find a substitute country for my memories from a specific place. So that may be Romania or the south of France, as it has appeared in my novels. Toronto also. But
Are you sure you're not just doing this whole thing as a tax offsetting?
If anybody has tax advice for me, I will be very, very happy to hear from you after, because ég í mjög vondum málum. Hjálp. No, like, I don't know. You like, so, for sake of transparency, we're all friends in here. Like me and Bjorn, we have a relationship out of being here.
We do, I'm sorry to say.
We're drinking buddies. But you're always...
Kept it very professional so far.
No. That's like, everybody knows. This is a tiny place and everybody knows everybody. I've had sex with most of these guys. But you're always trying to help me out with taxes, and it's like you tell me so many times, and I never remember, and like I'm always fucked. Currently, what was the question again? Okay, locations. So
we've done poo, we've done misery, we've done taxes. Welcome to the joy of storytelling.
Hey, there you are.
Well, we had as a joke that we were gonna, because our names are kind of humorously close to ABBA. We have Benny, Jenny, Bjorn, Pedro. So maybe we should just sing a couple of ABBA songs, right? Yeah, like
take a chance,
take a chance, take a chance. Now you. Take a chance. Everybody, take a chance. Okay, so coming back to locations, I feel it's necessary to ground the story. It's Friday. To ground the story, you kind of need to take it seriously and like.
Are we done with this? About ABBA. I don't think you're going to bring it back to locations now. Except maybe Sweden. I don't know. I don't really know how to follow up on that one. Now, once you've sung the ABBA song, like it...
Summon the ABBA.
Oh, right. So... Yes,
this feels very much like the ending of every date that I go to. It's like an awkward silence, and then, okay, so this was nice. Unmatch.
moving here.
Yeah, soon there will be a new Jenny Colgan book about a fictional island. I wonder what you're going to call it. Right, well, I think with that, we have been Appa.
So you'll probably need a real estate guy.
Oh yeah, you need a real estate guy when you write your fictional island novel. Or are you gonna use the same real estate guy?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
I would like to thank Benny Sif and Pedro and Jenny. I said Jenny, that's sort of the Icelandic pronunciation.
No, that's fine.
of the name.
I live here now.
Yeah, there you go. Very
Gotta
much.
get a Land Rover.
Yeah, just wave at the other Land Rover drivers. They get very antsy about that. I would like to thank you so much for being here with us to talk about scat and money and taxes and the joy of storytelling. And thank you all for sitting here with us tonight, and I do hope you'll stick around for the next panel.